what are the must-watch anime of winter 2023, and what are going to be the hidden gems? With me to answer that question is the one, the only, Axel Ablaze. Axel, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me back on the channel, and I'm absolutely excited to talk about some cool anime coming up.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure to have you, and I'm glad I asked you to help me because you actually pointed me in the direction of a bunch of anime that are coming out, so why don't we just get right into it? So we're going to start with the first tier, the top tier, the must-watch tier. So I'll go first. From bottom to top, I have Bungo Stray Dogs Season 4, Tokyo Revengers Season 2, and then Vinland Saga Season 2. What do you have?
So for me, I have from bottom to top Nier Automata, Campfire Cooking in Another World, and Vinland Saga Season 2.
Interesting. Okay. So why don't you talk about, we both agree with Vinland Saga for obvious reasons. The farm arc is going to be hype. Why don't you talk about Tokyo Revengers then? Why don't you think it's going to be must-watch?
So I want to say that it's not a must-watch. It's still in the hype section, only because I do think there is going to be a manga reader bleed out for the anime. I think that for the anime onlys, it's still going to be fine. The content that is in Season 2 of Tokyo Revengers is going to be great, but I think there is going to be a bit of a falling out, at least for the people that have read the manga and or from people that have heard about the manga. But for anime onlys, that at least is why I still have it in the hype category, just not in the must-watch.
All right. I unfortunately have not read the manga, so I can't really speak to that. But again, I do understand why manga readers might be like, you know what, I'm not watching this. So then, why don't you talk about Campfire Cooking then? Because I've never heard of this, but you told me earlier, like, no, we gotta talk about this. So why is it a must-watch?
So the reason why I put it in a must-watch is plain and simple. It's done by Mappa. And obviously, that is the anime studio that everyone talks about all the time, because it always has a lot of the, big-name series. So the fact that Mappa is actually handling an isekai series like this, I think that makes it worth mentioning. I think it's really interesting that this is an isekai series, but the main character is one that I guess he has an ability called Unlimited Grocery or something like that. So anytime I get to see fantasy food, for me, that's something that I really enjoy, and especially if this is going to be a focus of the series. So those at least are the contributing factors for me.
Alright, well, thank you for pointing that out. I had no idea that Mappa was doing this, and the premise sounds interesting enough. But that pretty much settles the must-watch tier then. We're, aside from those two...
At the very least, I did include Nier Automata as well. And at least, the reason why I put that in must-watch is twofold. One, I think the video game series itself has a lot of attention on it. So I think that is going to bring in a lot of people. And two, it is being done by A1 Studios, which is another one of the top tier ones. So I think there's a lot going for it as well.
Yeah, right. It's definitely got a lot going for it. The reason, so I put it in hype tier, I just feel like, I don't know, compared to some of these other series, if you're not a Nier Automata fan, it might not necessarily be a must-watch, but you bring up a great point. It's being done by A1. A1 has done a ton of great anime, so obviously there's a certain expectation for this one. But aside from those, I'll just highlight Vinland Saga and Bungo Stray Dogs. Vinland Saga Season 2 it probably adapts what is the most important arc for the series just because, the tone of the series or the message of the series really shines in this content. Then we have Bungo Stray Dogs, which I've never heard of. I've never watched it, but it looks really interesting. It's kind of like a mystery series from what I can tell, and apparently people are really excited for this, so I'm expecting it to end up being a must-watch. So why don't we go ahead into the hype tier? I started off last time, so Axel, why don't you start?
Sure. So starting from the bottom, and this is my completely objective opinion on this, but I have totally stolen that from Roger at this point. Bottom of the list, I've got Tokyo Revengers, Trigun, Misfit of Demon Academy Season 2, Bofuri Season 2, Inspector Season 2, and then Bungo Stray Dogs Season 4.
Yeah, again, we're looking pretty similar. So from bottom to top, I have Tomo-chan is a girl, Kubo Won't Let Me Be Invisible, then Trigun, then Ayakashi Triangle, then Nier Automata, and then at the top I have Nagatoro. So let me ask you this, what's your take on Trigun? Because personally I've never watched it, I know people love it, but I didn't really know what it was when they announced Trigun Stampede, and I looked it up and I'm like, so it's a reboot? So what's your take on this?
This is going to be one that's going to be very contentious for a lot of people. I think for people that are potentially new to Trigun, this might not feel as bad compared to people that are, Trigun fans of the original series, especially the ones where, like, if they're Toonami fans, since that was a big part of classic Toonami, at least for the adult part of it. So, at least for me, like, knowing what his design was, I'm not necessarily a fan myself of, like, hipster Vash hair with, like, everything being down instead of everything being straight up, but that could just... I shouldn't say that it could just be me, because it's not just me. His design is very contentious. It's also being done in CGI, which is another one that is obviously a very big contentious thing. From what we've seen, I think it looks really clean so far. Obviously, there's a lot of buzz around it. So I think the hype is there. Whether or not it fails or succeeds, that's going to depend a couple episodes in, but I understand how there's that struggle going into it.
Yeah, I just don't understand, like, why they're doing this reboot. Like, if they were going to revamp interest in Trigun, the easy answer would just be reanimate the series. But at the very least, I checked, it's by Studio Orange, and if I'm correct, it's the same studio that did Beastars, and everyone seemed to be fine with that, so I feel like it at least has that going for it. Alright, so then why don't we talk about Nagatoro, because I personally, so last season, or the season it came out, I had no idea what it was. I was like, you know what, this looks stupid, like a lot of people, but I saw everyone saying like, man, this series is so funny, like it's so heartwarming, and I watched it, I'm like, oh my god, this series is great. So why don't you have it in hype tier?
For the main reasons why you said that you didn't get into it originally. I have not personally cared, based on, because I've seen manga panels and stuff like that before the anime got released, and for me, it was just never my thing.
Ladies, gentlemen, everyone else, those were Axel's words, not mine, so Nagatoro fans, don't come after me. No, I can respect that. No.
He brought me on. I'm his responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that pretty much settles it for me then. Again, I don't really disagree with any of your rankings. Is there anything else you feel like you should highlight for this tier?
Yep, so I did list 3 season 2s on here. I listed Misfit of Demon Academy, I listed Bofuri, I listed Inspector. These are ones where, like, easy enough, like, they were very popular when they had their first seasons come around. If you have not watched the first seasons for any one of these 3, it's super easy because their first seasons were just single course anime. So you have time before any one of them starts if you want to kind of look into any one of them. But pretty much everything else we have already spoken for, so I've said my piece.
On that note, let's go ahead into the sleeper tier. I'll start because I put Inspector Season 2 and Bofuri in this tier only because I hadn't heard about them, but I don't know, you've kind of convinced me that they should go in a hype tier. And on the same note, so from bottom to top, I have Campfire Cooking, Bofuri, Saito Handyman, and then Inspector Season 2. So again, you know, I hadn't heard about them, but they sound really good. I talked about it earlier, Campfire Cooking. Now that you mentioned it's by MAPPA, definitely put it in must watch. The only one, and I'm really curious to hear from you, is Saito Handyman, because again, another series, hadn't heard of it, but you're like, no, we have to talk about this. But what did you put?
So for my sleeper tier, I put Record of Ragnarok at the bottom, Ayakashi Triangle, Handyman Saito in Another World, Kubo-san Won't Let Me Be Invisible, and Tomo-chan Is a Girl. So, the reasoning for my Handyman Saito. 1, I think it's funny that it's another isekai series. It's about literally a handyman that gets flung into a fantasy world. So that aspect of it, at least, is funny to me. One of the other reasons, though, I put it in here is that, or at least recommended it, is that it's being done by Studio C2C. And they're also the studio that's going to be doing Shangri-La Frontier later this year. So part of me putting this in the sleeper category and being interested in watching it is because I'm curious to see what they do with this anime to give me some kind of perspective on what to expect with Shangri-La Frontier.
Yeah, the premise seems funny enough, but I had no idea it was the same studio that's doing Shangri-La Frontier. I mean, again, you just sold me because, I mean, Shangri-La Frontier is just so good. It's what I think is one of the best gaming, quote-unquote, stories, manga, ever. So I'm super excited for that anime. So yeah, I will at least check out the first episode or two of Saito Handyman because, again, I'm just so excited for that. But let's talk a little more about Ayakashi Triangle. You said, you know, it's a Jump series, but it hasn't had a lot of talk about it. When it was still in Weekly Shonen Jump, you know, I saw people talk about it, but obviously it wasn't like the biggest series. But, you know, it's been around for a while now, so I feel like there will be that interest. And also, I mean, we just have to say it, well, say it without saying it. There's a certain aesthetic appeal, I guess we could say. How do you think?
If you like Ichi, it's Ichi.
Yeah, that's
the conflicting thing here. You do have to understand that they are high schoolers.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Take that as you will.
Yeah, you know, it's not necessarily going to be that great, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of talk about it for that reason, but I can easily see it being in sleeper tier. So now, why don't we go into sleep tier? Because you brought up a series that I expected to be here. Why don't you go ahead and start?
So I have one series in sleep tier because I had to add a tier below the sleep tier for one series in particular, just based off the premise. So, as we mentioned before, the one series that I have in sleep tier is Nagatoro, but I am completely fine with you having it above the sleep tier.
So then, what did you put in this tier below sleep tier?
I put Onimai, I'm Now Your Sister down there because the premise sounds trash. Absolutely trash. Trash. Stay away from this. I could be very wrong, but again, just going based off premise alone, I'm staying away from this.
So I asked people on Twitter, you know, what are you guys excited for? And a few people recommended this. And they said the name after Ayakashi Triangle, and I'm like, this sounds so much worse than Ayakashi Triangle. And they're like, no, it's wholesome, I swear. So I put it in sleep, people seem to like it, so I'm like, okay. But I don't disagree with what you just said. I watched the trailer and I'm like, So I'll go ahead and say mine. I put, from bottom to top, I put Onimai, then Record of Ragnarok, and then I put Misfit of a Demon King Academy. So why don't you talk about Record of Ragnarok then? You put it in sleeper tier. I put it in sleep just because I didn't even watch the first season. I just saw the complaints with the animation and I'm like, yeah, this looks like trash. But why do you think it's in sleeper tier?
Let me clarify first. I put it in the bottom of sleeper tier. Like, I could have put it at the top of sleep tier. I am only giving it a sliver of a chance because yes, the first season is garbage. It literally had slideshow presentation animation several times throughout the season. The main reason why I have it in the sleeper tier, the bottom, is that I am hoping they improved it a little bit for season 2 after seeing some of the backlash. And it does feature, right off the bat, my favorite fight in all of Record of Ragnarok.
Alright, fair enough. I can see where you're coming from. Okay, so that pretty much does it then. I feel like we're pretty much on the same page, and you also made me much more excited for the season. I thought this season was going to be pretty stale, but I feel like there's a lot of good anime to watch. In my opinion, I feel like even though Vinland Saga, Tokyo Revengers, and possibly Bungo Stray Dogs are going to do very, very well, they're going to be the talk of the season, I feel like there's going to be a lot more shows to actually pay attention to. What do you think?
I do agree with that. At the same time, there are still several very big holdovers going from the fall season into the winter season. There are also several different season 2s and like first seasons that we didn't cover, but I think this is definitely going to be the time where Vinland Saga definitely like shows up to the stage and just absolutely crushes it. There's a lot of good stuff though.
Well, that pretty much does it then. Again, I am super excited for this season. Axel, thank you again for joining me. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Guys, make sure to comment below which anime did we not talk about that you think are worth watching. How would you rank these anime? Again, comment down below. I'll pick my favorite. I'll share it on my community tab. Make sure to like the video if you found this tier list helpful. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and the both of us hope to hear from you soon.